Welcome to another episode of Creative Leaders Unplugged. I'm Morgan, here with Arna, and today we talked with Lee Kim. And she reflected on who she is, who she's becoming, and all of the things that have made her that way.
Yeah. Very, very beautiful person. I remember seeing the film made by the New Yorker about her, short film, and about her, what she calls the Wearable Tracys. These hats is made out of pipe cleaners, which is such an amazing story that it's attached to it. And I don't want to get too deep into it because that's basically what we're going to talk about. And
But we also talk a lot about other things as well. But it's all connected. It's all connected because also, like you said, she's a beautiful person. And you can see that in the Wearable Tracys, but then also in how she was approaching some other things.
Yeah.
And it's one of those conversations that make me excited for life. And
oh wow.
kind of really, like it kind of like opened up the possibilities, like, oh, how can I approach things differently, and how can I start to make changes in my environment and how I approach things that might lead to more exciting outcomes.
And you share something with her. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And how
I think you shared more than one thing, but specifically I was kind of thinking of, moving from one country, one culture to another. Because
correct.
of a similar reason, not seeing the future in the country that you're from, and then basically, giving yourself a new option, a new opportunity, somewhere totally new, a new start, right?
Yeah. And I wouldn't say I was necessarily like country based, but just, hey, based on how things are going, it's not going to work. This isn't how I want it to go. And her and I both approached that transition in a similar way, which was interesting to find out. Yeah, but also nice.
Like, exactly.
Yeah.
That's I actually don't want to say
too much.
Yeah,
no.
Right. Because I'm like, no,
it was really, I mean, of course, all of our conversations we have on this podcast are interesting, but this one has really somehow sparked something. I can, like, it feels like my body is sparkling. It doesn't look like that. I still look normal and tired, but, but I can really feel like it's activated something within me to think about, okay, good. to think about things differently. So I hope it also does the same for anyone who's, willing to listen.
Okay, enjoy.
I'm from South Korea. I was born on an island called Jeju-do. And it's a very special island because it's a place where we speak different dialect. So different that we actually have a subtitle when people from mainland watch a video or drama from that island. And I say that because I left the island when I was 11. And then I left Korea when I was 18 to come to States. And my identity, I think, of who I am start from where I started, of an island girl. But my true identity of who I became came when I came to the States, because that's when I began to question who I was. When I was in Korea, I never questioned who I was because everybody else was the same. We all had same identity about the country, about who we are, about the society we belong, the customs we have to. But when I came to the state, I began to question, who am I if I'm not in the country I was born in? And who am I if I'm not the knowledge that I gained from the country I was born in? And so now I call myself a human with deep curiosity and also a way to kind of explore who I could become rather than who I was born into. So I'm still defining myself of that, but I think what drives me is that curiosity to understand, who am I if I am not who I am today? So I'm more interested in who I become tomorrow than who I am today. But I know that who I am today depends on who I was yesterday.
That's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just was something that always triggers me is island, because I think, nation, country, yes, but island, there's something specific around an island culture, being what we call in the Netherlands, we have these islanders, we call them. So people who are, so we have a few islands here in the north of the Netherlands, and they see themselves also very separate from the mainlanders. They call, well, in Dutch it sounds different, but in English it translated would be the other siders. And the people from on the other side, which is really interesting, because that's a really strong identity right there. It's not just a nation, but it's an island, and so it's really interesting to see how that actually led you to question who you are, because you actually have that's a very strong identity. I mean, was it a scary thing for you? Did it make you insecure?
So I think 11, when I left the island to go to Seoul, I knew that I spoke differently, although I know how to speak Korean, right? The mainland, because that's how we speak in schools. I practice a lot to speak like the mainland, the Seoul, the standard Korean. But then when I come back to the island, I'll try to speak the dialect. And it takes about 2 to 3 days to get fully acclimated back to the island dialect. And I thought that was really important for me to be able to be reconnected by speaking the language of the islanders. When I went back after 10, 20, 30 years, and I still try to speak the dialect, my cousins will say, like, what language are you speaking? We don't speak like that anymore, because language evolves.
Yeah.
But I stayed in that, when I was 11. And I think that's really, really important for us to understand the cultural assimilation, how it happens. It doesn't only happen within like a different countries. It also happens within tribes. In this case, the island, as you said, was a different tribe than the mainland, where they spoke differently, they acted differently in certain ways. And I do believe that there is a strong characteristics of survivalism for the islanders, because we weren't given everything, right? The earth was not very fertile. The wind was strong, and people had to survive by learning different ways. So I was told by my friends in the mainland that the island women are headstrong, not in a positive way. They're not saying this one in a positive way. But I kind of see that as like, yes, I am independent and I can say what I think without really thinking about your feelings about how this is going to come across, right? So you also have to learn to kind of soften up a little bit.
And was there, because then you had two big shifts quite young, one from the island to the mainland, and then from the mainland then to the United States. How did those, were there any big culture shocks either at 11 or 18 that really kind of forced you to also reflect on, well, of course you reflect on yourself because you're in a new place and questioning, like you said, who am I? But were there any like culture shocks that you didn't expect or that really stood out to you?
Yeah. You probably experienced it when you went from Ohio to Netherlands. For me, of course, the main culture shock was expectation versus what it is. So when I thought of America, I thought America is just like, I thought about New York City as America, right? And when I first landed, I landed in Boston, and I did my language school outskirts of Boston, which we drove miles and miles and miles. The highway never ended. And in Korea, I never went on a highway, first of all. I don't remember being on a highway. And I don't remember going for that long of a ride on a car. And then there were not that many tall buildings. Like, Seoul was a lot more sophisticated than, this little
than the
town.
outskirts of Boston or Boston. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the culture shock was like, oh my God, this is like a desolate, it's not that many people here. What am I going to do? And then, of course, another culture shock was I am no longer, or the Korea that I believed in when I was taught the history and the things that we were taught. We pride ourselves on certain things. Some things that sounds really silly, but it was something that I grew up in, that we have 4 seasons. And we actually pride ourselves on having 4 seasons. And we pride ourselves on having blue, deep blue skies. And we pride ourselves on having a beautiful foliage. And because I came to the New England, it had 4 seasons. It has beautiful foliage. And I began to question, why was that so important to recognize things that was so not unique? Like 4 seasons, blue skies and foliage. And then I thought, is it really that we are such a great nation that we have to kind of put these things in the center? And I begin to question about, like, what is a nation, and why do we have patriotism? Why do our social studies focus on certain things and not others? And that's something that I still kind of think a lot about, like colonialism. Of course, we experienced it as Koreans. We had a long history of being colonized, but I didn't really know the deep pain that my ancestors has gone through. And I actually see that a little bit more when I am seeing, our neighbors, whether it's, African Americans, or our Native Indians, or even sometimes Asian Americans in America being discriminated, right? Then you feel it a little bit more. But I think those things of, like, being able to think independently without having other people to tell me what to think or what is right and what is wrong, um, it comes with a lot more of not just going with what I read, but actually being able to talk to others. And I wasn't able to do that when I was young. I'm talking about when I was 18, 19, 20, 21. I think I began to do a lot more of learning from others and singing, rather than what is right and what is wrong, singing, what is it like to be you? Like, what is it that you have experienced that was different from me? And I think that kind of openness comes from being in a very diverse environment. Like New York is, I say to people, New York feels like home because everybody is so different that I feel the same. If I feel the same, if everybody's the same, my small uniqueness will start out as something that's very different. But because everybody's so different, that even if you are very different, you are one of the different ones of
you're all the same in being different. Yeah.
So the difference, that's so interesting, because, like, the unofficial, Arna can correct me on this, the unofficial phrase of the Netherlands is just be normal. That's already crazy enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yes.
Where then you're saying, hey, okay, all of us and our uniqueness and our differences, then all of that also becomes normal. And that's one of the things that I've also really struggled with, coming from the States to then living in this culture where everybody places a value on this kind of downplaying things. I mean, the prime minister rides to work on a bicycle, is really like playing the normalcy card. So it's a very, that's really,
Yeah, we're all normal.
Yeah.
Which is really crazy. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, you shouldn't be so normal.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with you.
Yeah,
there must be all so normal.
Exactly. Yeah,
there must be some conspiracy theory going on behind the scene to make everybody normal.
For sure it is. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has, I mean, that's also a cultural thing in the sense that we're not, so the Netherlands is not an island, but we are a delta. And as a delta, there's always a risk of flooding, and that has happened. And so because there's these rivers coming in, and then there's the ocean, a big part of the country is below sea level. And so we needed to create a culture, it's not like someone decided, but the land that you're from or where you live really has an impact on who you are. And mountain people are different people than people who live in the plains, right? It gets into your psychology. I truly believe that we are, as human beings, and there's actually a wonderful book, Thinking Outside Your Brain, by the way, and basically it talks about, it's about embodiment, but it's about how we tend to think about our brain in a way we think. First of all, we used to think about it as a computer, but your brain is not a computer. And then we said, no, it's like a muscle, and it's not. But it kind of helps us because we want to compete, and we say that that muscle is trained more and stronger, or the computer is faster, and so we can compete. And so we have IQ, and this person is smarter than that person. But actually, your brain is not that. But your brain, and this is why this book, the title is really also provocative in the sense that it's thinking outside of your brain. You're thinking outside of your brain, meaning that everything you touch, you smell, you see, the environment that you're part of, the office space or wherever you are, it forms your thoughts. That forms who you are.
Yeah.
The people that you surround yourself with, et cetera, et cetera. Whether you've traveled or not, if you've seen different perspective, right? That changes you. This is why, you're moving from one situation, one island, to basically another island, which is New York City. But that transition enabled you to question things and say, hey, wait a minute, your thinking changed. If you would not have done so, it would, sure, you would have had other experiences, but that would not have happened. So that's why, it's so interesting. So the Netherlands is a delta, and so we needed to make sure that we collaborate, and we can't do any crazy things. So there's one thing we call it polderen, which is sort of, the way we kind of protect the country is by creating polders. So which are basically bits of land which are kind of surrounded by dikes, so elevated areas so the water can't come in. But those dikes need to be protected and maintained, and nobody wants the responsibility for this alone. You don't want that. No one wants to say, yes, I'm going to be in charge of all this stuff, because it's complicated. And so we actually have a government so there's a government that part of the government. So we have local government, we have national government, we have city government, and we have government that rules the water. And we actually vote for them, right? Which is weird in a way.
Water government.
Because it's really important, because we need people to focus just on that. And so that is interesting. It doesn't only changes the way we organize as a nation, which all nations do in a way if you look deep enough. But it also it's our psyche in a way we look at each other in a way and this is why we're also, I think, this is my theory, and if I'm wrong, send me an email. But I think this is why, for instance, Dutch are very direct, because we need to say what's going on. You can't go like, well, there's a dike. I remember, isn't there something, that maybe people should do at a time of danger, or, one of these days, maybe, you go like, no, there's water coming, dike, danger, fix it. It needs to be acute, because we are, in a way, there's this sort of acute danger always lurking. Which is not really true, but it's we don't know that. It's not something we sense, but it's there.
That's really interesting, Arne. So when did the water government begin? Is it always been there, the government that kind of like takes care of the water?
Yeah, well, it kind of, so that history I'm not that sure of, to be quite honest, but I do know that when the sort of this country started kind of creating land out of water, out of sea, building it. This is when basically that started. And I don't know when it was officially a separate part of government, but this is like for hundreds of years. And we had some disasters as well.
I asked the question because survival of the nation depended on this water maintaining or kind of taking care of this, inflow and outflow of the water. How the world would have been different if something depends on our survival, right? So right now, I think there is a crisis in like, what if it was trees? Will you have a tree government? What if it was the air? Would you have an air government? What if it was, whatever? And because we do have that for the water, in like the ocean divides into certain, like this belongs to this country, this belongs to that country, although it's not the same as the land. You have like markings, I'm sure. The reason that I asked that question was because I think as humans, and probably it's not just humans, all the animals that have life and death, when the survival depend on it, we begin to collaborate better, right? Like at that moment that comes and we collaborate, we find solutions and we move forward with it. But it doesn't sustain for a long time, because once you are out of that danger, the crisis, then you kind of move on to your BAU. And I was thinking about like, however, you just mentioned like, you don't know, the water government, or however that long has been, but the danger is always lurking.
Yeah.
So
and with the rising of the sea level, so it's getting more attention again, because it has been sort of something that, and like I said, there's actually we have to vote like every 4 years or so. We vote for these parties basically, and there used to be different political parties between brackets. There's not a lot of politics going on there, but now it's getting more attention. Also, the main political parties kind of want to get into that bit of government as well. So because of all that, and so to your point, it's really interesting if you see, if there's danger, if there's crisis, you work together. If that's because that's maybe how you survive the best. But sometimes we just don't see the danger because it's happening so slow. And I think you're right. So it's like this idea of, well, now we talk about global warming, for instance, but it's so slow, and when change happens so slow, you don't even see it, you don't notice it, and you can't see you can't see trees grow, but they're moving, but you can't see it because it's too slow, and so we don't notice it. So we take it, we're kind of like, nothing going. I don't see it, so it's not there.
Must not be real.
So it must not. It mustn't be real.
The crisis connection to collaboration is really interesting, because I heard someone say about COVID, all of these great scientific minds joined forces to collaborate on this one focus area. And they said if we could do that on every major medical situation, we could have these knocked out in like a decade. We would solve them if we all collaborated that intensely together all the time.
Which I want sort of one reason I want myself to ask this question then, because you're at Pfizer and you were at Pfizer at that time. Yes.
I wasn't involved in the development of vaccines.
Were you the one? Did you solve that?
Thank you.
I was just glad to have the vaccine,
No, but you were kind of in an environment, you were in an industry that was getting a lot of pressure, right? And basically from all sides. So, is that something that you've experienced in a way? I mean,
so because I'm not a scientist and I wasn't working in the lab, and there are, people who had done the miracles. What I did was actually, because I was in part of the organization that deals with medical conferences. And of course, all the gathering was being canceled, right? No medical conferences were happening. And if you think about it, really, medical conferences are important. That's where people come and share their newest data. You get to meet people, you get to collaborate. And if the gatherings are canceled, although there are virtual gatherings happening, people did not have the pivoting point from going from live to virtual with the same kind of efficiency and the way to make that happen, right? How do we make sure that the gathering is happening in a way that people can get the benefits? So what I did was there were a few people who got to know design thinking long before COVID, like 7 years ago, about like 2017. I was able to bring people together with my team members, and we had like 2 days of design thinking sessions with medical associations and, with our folks here. And we thought, okay, that was fun. Oftentimes this happens, right? And you might have experienced this too, Arne, and Morgan. It was fun, but nothing happened. We thought nothing happened until crisis hit. And then, people who participated in that session reached out and say like, hey, can we do something? Can we come together every Friday or something? Because I think we need to reimagine how the medical conferences will be. And so we begin to have just workshops on engagement. How do we engage people differently? And then eventually in 2021, so like a year later, we were able to launch a collaborative called Big Bang Collaborative, where we brought in different medical associations, different medical biopharma companies, and then creative agencies to come together to reimagine the future of medical conferences. This wouldn't have happened. Nobody would have actually given any kind of thought into the need of us coming together if the crisis didn't hit and they say, oh, we're doing fine. The way that we are doing, putting the sage on the stage and have our beautiful medical data to be released and have, celebration. That was going fine as for the last 100 years. Why change? But we had to change because that wasn't working anymore, right? So I say this to people when you first start meeting people and giving different ways of dealing with the problems, and then you leave, you think nothing happened. But what we did was we planted the seed that was very slow to germinate. And I think the water that kind of, allow it to give another life was the crisis. And when the crisis hit, that thing wanted to kind of come out and show a different life than what it was before. And I think we are still doing it, right? We are still coming together. And actually, I'm going to have another meeting tomorrow, and then we're going to have monthly meetings. And what we were able to do was to really think about how can we create medical engagement that is different than just expert share out on things. We were able to create with different medical associations who were part of the Big Bang Collaborative. One team does one, and then we share that learning to another team because conferences like this only happen once a year, right? The large medical conferences that brings like, tens and thousands of people only happen once a year. So if you want to iterate, you have to wait until next year. However, there are hundreds of medical conferences in different fields that's going on throughout the year. So if we can collaborate and then say like, hey, let's test out this type of engagement in January, and then let's iterate for February, and then let's iterate for March. You can now do parallel testing rather than waiting for that vertical testing, right? So although I wasn't able to contribute to the idea of creating a vaccine, I think we were able to come together and actually give the life to the little seed that we planted 7 years ago. And I'm really happy that we did that, because otherwise we wouldn't be in here reimagining the future of medical conferences as we were able to do for the last 2 years.
Yeah. So in a way, it's really interesting because so the podcast focuses on a creative leadership, which is just something we want to kind of see, because we feel everyone's a leader, but creative leadership is about creating options that other people never thought about or weren't, didn't even know was possible, of connecting things that you were like, oh yeah. And sort of what you're talking about is exactly that. You saw sort of things that were not connected, but were there, and the possibilities if you would connect it. And also the other thing is bringing people together, being sort of someone who kind of creates movement. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think that's also something that I'm not sure if it's a skill or it's an attitude or it's or it's just being courageous enough or dumb enough to say, hey, let's get together and let's see what happens. But that is something a lot of people don't do and can't do and find very difficult, because you have to be, we call that sort of a being sort of having a heads up kind of attitude. Like, so you're not head down, just working on what's ever in front of you, but you go like, hey, what's around? What else is here? And, oh, what if we bring that person together with that person, and then making those connections? I think that's a design skill that we don't always see and we don't teach in design schools or business schools, I think. But I think that's probably one of the most important skills for people like you, and within, systems and organizations, like, the ones that you are in, because that's the real innovation happening. You make it possible.
What I think happened was that I recognized that I probably fall into the next one, what you said about, you're either this one or that one. Not courageous, but I think I'm very dumb.
Yeah, me too.
Because what I believe is that I don't know well enough about the world around me to do everything on my own. But I have a lot of people around me who are smarter than me, who knows more than me in different ways than what I do. So I go and ask, like, hey, would you like to come together? Because I think we can do amazing things if we do X, Y, and Z. But I cannot do it without you.
But that
because
is
you have
very smart.
that ability.
Yes, but that is very smart. That is being smart. Being dumb is saying, I have my expertise and I don't need anyone else. I mean, that, maybe in the Middle Ages, maybe you could get away with that. But nowadays, I mean, you can't design things or implement things or, have real impacts, without the help of other people. It's impossible. You need.
If I go to school where I'm graded by saying, do you know everything? Do you have expertise in this area? I'll score very low on expertise areas, right? Yeah, however, I think, do you recognize your weakness? Do you recognize your strength? Can you bring people together to do this? Then I probably will score higher on those things.
Yeah, but this is where, sorry, I'm like this, can make me so angry. That is because we measure intelligence in a very dumb way. Because, we measure intelligence the way it suits the systems that we live and work in. But that's not what intelligence is, being able to make those connections. There's so many types of intelligence that you're not going to be scored on a school, because that's not how that system works. And I've been through that. I'm a school dropout, and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. But I have children, they're going through school, and they go through that same old system and being measured in ways that you go like that. How can you measure intelligence like that? How can you grade kids like that? Grade them on asking questions. On coming up with options, on whatever critical thinking, whatever. There's so many ways of teaching kids to that will enable them to be happy and healthy and successful, whatever that means in life. There's so many other ways. So sorry.
And I'm thinking, we hadn't started recording when Lee mentioned this, but I'm thinking, we're talking about the system, right? And how sometimes the system does or doesn't work. But before we started recording, Lee, you mentioned something like, I got asked this question and I was supposed to answered it in a specific way. But you asked if you could answer it in a different way. And that difference, you didn't answer it in the systemic way they wanted you to.
Yeah.
It was probably ultimately made more sense, but because it didn't fit the system, it kind of was difficult for them.
Right.
And also, like, you're talking about different systems, right? Like culturally, this is the land I'm from. Now I'm in a new land. Or nationally, how is this identity? And then also with your switch then from engineering to now working on like experiences and bringing people together, you've been in a lot of different systems. And then how do you find, because of course the audience doesn't know this, but I'm looking at you and you're wearing this fantastic hat on your head. It's made out of pipe cleaners. And there's a lot more to that, but you're also kind of finding ways to still work in the system, but also around and outside the system. So how did that that's a lot of people don't do that. So
Yeah.
how did you, what made you like that?
Yeah. Really interesting question, because I have asked that question to myself a lot as well. How can you be still fitting in but not lose yourself, and then continue to kind of improve who you can become, right? Not fitting into where you were brought in. So, like, although I didn't get the job that I went for because I didn't do the way that they were asking for, it was a decision that I have made, that if a leader can actually appreciate the way I do it, maybe it's a team that I can thrive in. But I made a decision to go with a non-systematic way of answering it. And, that might not have been the right choice at the time, but I made the choice. Um, in
Yeah.
Korea, we have a word called nunchi, and it is different from empathy. So empathy is kind of trying to be that person with curiosity. Nunchi is based on your life experiences. You kind of know what the other person thinks and do, but it requires a very special skill to fit in and kind of be able to survive. And because I left home when I was 11 and I was kind of surviving on my own without any guidance, I learned to acquire the skill of nunchi. um, and what I did through Nunchi was not really understanding with curiosity. It was trying to figure out, if I go this way, will I go faster? Will I go this way? So it's almost like manipulating. you know, I'm not manipulating the system, but I'm manipulating myself to be in that system in a way that I could fit in. Um, Now what I have learned was that there are actually better way than Nunchi, which is, if you can find the environment where the environment can see you can thrive better in certain ways, and they can actually provide you with the conditions to thrive in, that could help the environment, the system, to be better. So me wearing the hat started out as an accident, right? I forgot my friend's birthday and I started to wear this one, and I made a rule. I'm going to wear it from 9 to 5 because I want to be uncomfortable, remind myself. But what it created was this beautiful way of filtering people who are curious. People, when I walk into the building, in this headquarters of, very established company, in the beginning, when the individualism or uniqueness was not celebrated and fitting in was very important to the whole culture, many people frowned upon me and actually say, like, why is she doing this? Is she trying to stand out? Like, is there some kind of agenda behind what she's doing? But eventually, the company culture also shifted along the way, how the whole country was shifting. But I was the same, right? So you stay the same as who you are, and you learn to see people. So you no longer are doing the nunchi, manipulating yourself to be like somebody else. You're still true to yourself, but you understand how the system is changing. You can kind of see the waves are turning, and then you find yourself in a group that appreciates you for who you are, and they actually encourages others to be who they can be. And um, so I think it is finding that place, and it's not always easy. And I have been fortunate enough to find the leaders who support me for what I do and the way that I show up, um, and the way that I don't show up. But I think, now that I've been doing it for 6 years, this is 1,504th one that I have made,
Mhm.
on the way to work. I also am giving myself a way to express myself that is very uniquely me. And it would not have happened if I just did it once or twice or 3 times or even a month or a year. Um, so I think there is also strength in consistency in how you do it, why you do it. And there is also beauty in storytelling, because, obviously there's a story behind this wearable Tracy, and how that storytelling connects other people to understand who I am and what I do. Um, and like, I think every day is a choice for me, because in the beginning, when like right now, it looks quite structural. Sometimes people say like, oh, yes, very architectural. I can see why you're an engineer. I don't see it, but people, kind of try to make patterns out of what I do. But in the beginning, it wasn't. It was like a bird nest on my head, didn't have any shapes or forms. It was just like falling everywhere. But now that after several years, you begin to see that within 45 minutes, you can create this structure that other people can say like, wow, that's a piece of art. Um, so I think definitely there is recognizing what the system is, how far I can push, and then also um, have something for people to understand what you do, because when people don't understand, it's threatening to people. They got scared.
I can
Actually,
imagine. Yeah.
yeah, there was a lady. I went to the kitchen area in our old building. Initially I was on the third floor, and I moved to the fifth floor. And I was just having my coffee, and this lady looks at me and she's like, there's a room on the third floor that's full of those things. And I was like, because I moved from third floor to fifth floor. She only recognized the third floor room, which I had like hundreds of these things. And I was like, oh, really? And she said, yeah, that room is like a mushroom. It grows every day. It grows and grows, and sometimes it comes out. I got so scared of that room, I actually changed my route. When I get to the third floor, I don't pass by that corridor anymore. And I was like, oh my God, really? And she said, yeah, you should see it. And I was like, well, that room actually moved to the fifth floor, And she was like,
It's following you.
really? And I said, yeah, it's my room. And she looked at me like, why would you do such a thing? Like she got scared. And I
Oh
recognized
boy.
that, when things does
Yeah,
not make sense to people,
for sure.
people get scared. People are
Yeah.
fearful. And so, but when you share stories behind why I do it, then it makes sense to them. So you just kind of have to give that way for people to connect. Because I think in the beginning, I had people turn around and not wanted to make eye contact with me. It didn't make sense to them.
So I just want to add for people listening, because obviously they don't see you. There is actually, if you can Google your name, and then the New Yorker has a wonderful short film with you in it about the wearable Tracy and why you wear it, and
Yeah.
that's actually I saw that before we actually met, but a long time ago. But what I thought was really interesting in what you
But
said
maybe
as well.
also, but quick context is that every working day or every day?
Yeah, every day when I come into work. I mean, in the beginning, the first year was every day, regardless of me coming into work or not.
So every day you wear a big every day you wear a pipe cleaner hat.
Yeah.
And then and that's then what we're talking about in case the audience hasn't followed along yet. So
no worry, I'll put a link in somewhere.
Yeah, it looks like I have like a tree growing in my head, out of my head. Not a big one, like maybe twice as big as a chia pet.
But now it's pink at least. The colors change. No, it's wonderful because what really stuck with me was this. Also in the film, you see you're walking through the city, but this idea of being sort of this intervention, and that's for a lot of people. It's just because I think most people, when they hear the story, they'll get it because what you said, you get these meetings with people, you meet people in a totally different way because they'll go like, what are you doing? So you get all these connections, which otherwise you would not have had. But it's very courageous for a lot of people who will be like, people think I'm crazy and I don't want to stand out and I don't want that. So, being an island girl, still, I mean, it's a really fascinating transition, I think.
Yeah.
To not just only be in New York, where you say everybody's different, a lot of people stand out. You go like, yeah, I will play that game. So even, so it's such a, so in a way, maybe one question is, and maybe we already have the answer to that, but still, if you would have stayed on the island, would you have ever done that? Would you
No.
be wearing, right?
No.
So
My mother actually,
yeah, please, your mother. I want to hear.
My mother actually questioned, why would you put yourself into a situation where people can make fun of you?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right?
I think a lot of people would think,
it's vulnerable.
And when I'm in Korea, I actually do not wear it. Like when I go to, you know, because the idea is for me to connect with people. And in Korea, who am I gonna like? Because I only go to Korea to visit my family, and there is maybe in the airplane I'll wear it, right? Like
They'll let you
because
through
there's
security.
still oh yeah, I in the airplane on the airport I wear it.
Beep.
Yeah. um, but I think in the beginning it was just for me to challenge myself for 365 days, and like let me do it until Tracy's next birthday, and then it became a partnership between me and my daughter, where she draws every day and I take a look at it, and then I make shapes out of things, or the feelings that I get from her drawings. I do it now, especially when I go to places where in the beginning, like, the first year, I didn't have, other than the challenge, I didn't have anything to push me. Like, I just wanted to do 365 days. I'm going to do this one. This is my challenge to myself. But after a year, it became a challenge to see, like, will I be able to make connection with a stranger that I have never met, or know anything about me? Because when you go to work, you know that they work in certain places and you have certain things. But when you get on the subway, CEO or, a clerk or just the students, they're all the same, right?
Yeah.
You don't know who is who. So there's a chance encounter that could happen just based on your level of curiosity. And that's what I was really kind of excited to test out on. And I had ran into people on the subway, and those are the ones that I really, really love, because in the subway, there are people who you're not going to meet in your daily life. On the subway, like, I have in the film, although you don't see it, there was this old man who looked at me and then say, "That's beautiful." And then I asked his name, "What's your name?" And he says, "Juan." And I got to learn that he has a daughter who has, separated from him, but he still loves his daughter. And he tells me all these stories. And I just feel so privileged to be
but you
be able to hold on to that story,
but you puncture a bubble.
Yeah.
That's because it's an intervention. People go like, huh.
Yeah.
And then, something opens up, because otherwise everyone acts the same and they're all in their own space, trying to kind of keep their private space, especially in busy areas. And you kind of go, plop,
And sometimes that puncture takes 3 years. So people have seen me, because I don't see people. So like I'm at a bus stop, and 3 years after I started this guy comes up to me and he was like, "I've seen you."
Yeah.
Different one. Why?
Yeah.
And after 3 years,
I think I would be that.
Right?
I would be someone. So for me, I'm a bit of I'm a little bit autistic when it comes to when I'm out there in the wild. I'm shy, and I think I would be at the bus stop with you, and I would go like, my brain would go like, what's going on? It's like, I'm so curious. But I'd be afraid to ask. So maybe not 3 years, but if, maybe after a few weeks, you're still there and it's different, I might go like, they're very pretty. Or
right?
something. Or when we make eye contact, I go like, okay, I gotta ask, sorry, But it takes a while, because you go like, can I? Is that okay? maybe you go like, mind your own business. Like, or you go like, what's on my head? What do you mean? What?
I don't see it.
There's nothing on my head. You go like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, but that's the thing. You don't know. And we as humans, so I mean, it's kind of funny in a way, but it's also sad that because you don't know, you can't read people's mind.
Yeah.
You don't know what the interaction is going to be like. So you rather stick to your own little private space.
Yeah.
But if we would know that if I would ask you about it, we would have this wonderful conversation. But I don't know. So there's this uncertainty, right?
But that's also beautiful, right? Because if you know that that's exactly what's going to happen, then you can choose to opt in or not.
Right.
Okay, yeah, okay. But if you don't know and you're brave enough to take that little step, say, hey, you're wearing a beautiful hat.
Yeah.
There's kind of also like this magic and like, okay, she's doing something a little bit not normal. I'm doing something a little bit not normal.
I'd be the guy that I would be in this bus stop and someone else would start that conversation straight away. Someone else come in and would say,
be,
wow,
thank
that's
God she's here because I want to hear everything.
Yeah, I know. But I'd be too embarrassed to then kind of, also join the conversation.
Yeah.
And but I'll tell you sort of something because so there's someone I know really well for a long time. But when I got to know her, so one of her eyes, you never know exactly which eye looks at you. So I don't know what you call that. But one eye is actually the eye she looks at you from, but you don't know it. You can't tell because she looks two different ways. And I just didn't talk about that. I never asked her. And I was just kind of, focusing on, because I wanted to look her in the eye, because that's what you do as people, when you talk to each other, you look at each other. And in my brain was going, where do I look? So which one is she looking at me? And then I met her many times, and then I thought, now it's too late because now I can't ask.
What's your name again?
Yeah, exactly. What's your name again? You can't ask. And then a friend of mine who he joined one day, and it was the first time they met. And the first thing he asked is like, "Oh, which eye is your right eye? Which one is is the one you're looking through?" And she said, "Oh yeah, this one." And they're like, "Damn it." Damn it. Why can't I? What's wrong with me? Right. And it's so, but I think a lot of people have that is kind of, because you don't want to insult people. And so there's too much inner chatter in my head going like, no, or yes, or should I? I don't know. Oh, too late. Like,
what was interesting? So Ohio, since you talked about Ohio. So my friend Tracy, whose birthday I have forgotten, she's from Middletown, Ohio.
Oh, nice.
And so she was working on this opioid crisis, meeting with the opioid addicts. And so she got to know this person very privately through her research. And she asked a few of us in her friend circle to come to Ohio to do this field study with her. We're going to go to this part of the town that opioid addicts kind of live in. And so, because I was making things every day, I had a couple of them left. And so I said, well, let me bring a few of them for them. And Tracy said, no, this is not going to work. They don't care about those things, right? But her friend, and then so the person gets on the car when we got there, and she looks at this clown and she was like, oh my God, can I have it? So, because she thought that because she's an addict and she's going through different life challenges, this would not be something that they will react positively. But she loved it and she wore it. We went to the downtown area there. And for some reason, wearing this made her feel a little bit more normal, that she can walk into a store that she has never been to because she has been ostracized for so long.
Yeah.
That being able to actually do that was pretty cool to her. And so I think, sometimes we think that some people will not appreciate the creativity, the craziness, the things that like through eyes of system, it might look a little bit bulging here and, kind of like, not quite smooth. But sometimes those are the ways for us to really have a conversation with those people that we might never understand. So like our assumptions of, although we are very open-minded and, we are quite exploratory in many different ways, I think sometimes you let people to react to what you have will provide you with different answers than your years of studies and understanding of your own people.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful example. Yeah. Because I can also imagine that I would be super curious to hear her experience of then wearing it, because she probably has one experience of going into new stores or going into different parts of town. And her experience is probably very different than when she was wearing the hat.
Right. It was very positive, right? Because the clerks were focusing on the hat than her like drug addict demeanors or gestures, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so maybe it wasn't coming from a place of creativity per se, but then just the social element is really
but you're touching upon something that is such an it's fascinating. My first job was photographer, and I done a series on homeless people, people living in the streets, and I call it the Invisibles, because once you start really paying attention, you also notice that people do not see them or don't want to see them, so they just walk past them, and because they're uncomfortable to look at, and you feel you can't help anyway, and so they become these invisibles, and the things that they sometimes do to kind of ask for attention is it's so sad in a way, but there's something there too. So I'm just saying that these kind of interventions, they kind of uncover things that we otherwise don't see, right? You kind of you create an intervention, so that kind of creates a little, it gets feedback from the system, and you're like, we don't see these things anymore. We don't notice these things anymore.
Yeah.
Or we take them for granted, or we never thought about that. So it's not so much about the wearable Tracy in that sense, but it's more about you're kind of creating this intervention, and it's about the system, how it responds, which is so interesting.
Similar things happened. So my friend is a pediatric palliative care doctor. So she deals with children who are dying. And I was, volunteering with her in understanding what we as a healthcare system can help. And the first thing, of course, it was like a long time ago, 7 years ago. And because I was starting out, I was like, well, can I interview these kids? And I wasn't thinking, I really did not know that they only had a few weeks or months to live. Like I had no idea, right? And I wore these hats, and my friend said maybe it's not a place to wear, and I'm like, why not? Like, and she said, okay, wear it. And actually, the social workers, the administrators, the children, their reaction was very positive, because, and I think it's almost like putting a museum in a children's hospital, like whether it doesn't have to be intensive care units. You don't expect it, right? You expect it to be sterile, clean. Adding art into children's hospital might not have been something that was always there, but somehow some person thought about maybe art and care comes together, and they had that systematic intervention to bring, maybe if people smile more, maybe people feel more comfortable in the place where they are being cared for, maybe their recovery will be faster. Like, I don't know what this, the decision point was, but I saw that there are so many assumptions we make by going in to be professional in our appearances and, say the right things. But maybe that might not give you the best result, but you don't know it because we're not given the chance to test out. And in a way, in a strange, again, very unexpected way, what Wearable Tracy did was to test assumptions about what is allowed and what is better for the receivers, not from the safe, playing safe on our end.
Exactly.
So so that was an interesting experience that I had at the Children's Hospital as well.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because based on these different contexts, the intervention does something different, but also like, because your motivation behind initially creating and then continuing to wear the wearable Tracy was one thing, and you could have done that in different ways, right? I want to be out of my comfort zone. I want to encourage these social interactions. It didn't have to be a hat. People who then see the hat or interact with the hat, they also have these different experiences and encounters in different ways. And so maybe their motivation isn't the same as yours, but it's then also providing them what they need, or I don't know. It's and like you said, the challenge to test assumptions. I don't know. There's just something really, really interesting about that. Because what if we could all find something for ourselves that we kind of dare ourselves to kind of keep pushing that boundary and that edge for ourselves, and also how does it help us interact or connect with others?
Yeah.
I think the world would be so different, even for ourselves, if we just did that even for 6 months or something.
Yeah. Like, the wearable Tracy is a metaphor, and something that we can all find. We all create our own wearable Tracy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
What's the thing? Yeah.
And it could be just simply, asking questions.
Exactly.
What if every day I start by sending emails to, 5 people? What if I start, whenever I see somebody saying like, find something that you really like about that person and then say it, right? It doesn't have to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
However, I think what Wearable Tracy gave me was a way to not hold on to it. So although I made 1,504 wearable Tracies, I only have about 10 of them in my house. Rest of them are somewhere in the world, right? Because the idea is not for me to.
On the fifth floor.
Yeah, on the fifth floor now.
There's a rumor. There's a rumor about a room. Scary place.
Yeah.
But they're growing.
Yeah.
You're growing them there. That's
And after 5, I give it away to people, and there were a couple of art shows that I had where people come and I ask them, take it, but promise me that you will wear it outside, because when they wear it, it just brings a smile. So many people told me that, like, oh my God, like you would not believe how many people complimented or smiled. And so whatever the experiment it is, if there is a way for you to kind of allow that person to experience it themselves as well, it doesn't have to be a requirement. But I thought each time I'm trying to, see how far can I push this button a little bit more. And now, with this, we had a friendship parade where we invited people, and then say like, hey, let's go around the block and we'll all wear it, and then we'll call it friendship parade. And we had a great time there as well.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so I'm also thinking, because you've been doing this now, I think for 6 years, you're up to 1,500 hats.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this for some time. So is it still pushing the boundary for you? And of course, it's still adding a lot of value because you're still doing it. But is it something that's still pushing the boundary for you? Or have you added a new challenge, or are you working on something else as well? Because when we first started, you said something about, I don't always think about where I've been, but also where I'm going. So where are you going?
Yeah. I'm so in terms of just like making visible, tangible, physical product, this probably will be continuously whenever, forever. At least that's what I'm thinking, But in terms of, because I'm now thinking about experiences, and the way that I have created experiences was more of a facilitation. And within the facilitation, I'm really interested in this storytelling, because I think what really made Wearable Tracy come alive is not because it's beautiful art. It's because there is a story behind what I make, and then how they can be part of the stories. So my latest project is to allow people to come to a place with their singular stories, and then create collective stories, and then create experiences based on these collective stories. And I call this one as the beauty of human stories are not created based on the data that feeds into the stories. Beauty of human stories that we can relate to it, right? So because I have written stories with the ChatGPT, and my daughter, 10 years old, she also has written stories with the ChatGPT. And sometimes she gets frustrated because it gives you exactly the same story with a little bit of variation, because that story does not have a soul in it. And no matter how bad my story is, a little bit of my soul is buried into that bad story, right? So my continuous experimentation for the next part that I'm exploring this year is how can we bring individual stories that has element of you in it, create collective stories, and then create experiences for people who do not know your individual story, but somehow can relate to the experiences from their stories. So I'm doing it with experimentation. It's like I just you will see every once in a while I'll call out to the world, hey, I'm running this experiment, come and join us, and then figure out, because I've seen a lot of framework on creating experiences, 5 E6 experience, and like different ways of creating experiences. And I want to actually be able to not follow the framework with activities. I want to be able to create a way for people to bring themselves in to creation of something. So I don't know what it will be, but that's my latest experiment. And when it's done, I would love to share it with Arne, you, and see whether we could actually make it a little bit more of a offering to the world.
Cool. We're in.
Sure. Yeah.
That's really powerful, because then also you mentioned one time you met an old man, and his name was Juan, and then he started to share his story. And because it wasn't just you sharing your story, it was also this coming together of things. And if we could
and that story resonated with me, because although I have my family, I have my mom, and but we have a strange relation. We have like a little bit of a tough relationship. And when he said that I have a difficult relationship with my daughter, I am a daughter who has difficult relationship with my mother, right? So that's what I mean by, like, we came from different world, but we can connect because your experiences somehow have some experiences of mine. And I think that's the human story that we can connect with each other. He's talking as a father. I'm talking as a daughter. I'm receiving it as a daughter. And I think the beauty of the human story is that we could actually look at one story, but with a different eyes, and get different experiences, and that's something that I think, I don't know, hopefully the technology will not take away from us.
No,
I think we'll have to fight. I think we'll have to fight against the machine here. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit more positive. I think it will actually elevate the human story. It will make it more. Actually, it will make it stand out more, because when we talk about empathy, for instance, I mean, when a machine tells you a story about having a difficult relationship with its father or its mother, we go like, yeah, for sure. Right. And you go, it's not really, I don't care. Because it's a machine. And when a human being says it, because we are human beings. And so listening to stories of other human beings is the human story, which is very different. It's not just a story. It's about life and going through life and having all these, similar experiences. And I think that's just, we're going to have actually, and I think technology should be there to actually give us the time and space and the freedom to actually become more human, even. To even have that time to actually do the things that are more meaningful than working in a 9-to-5 job in a cubicle. All right. I think it should free us up. And I think that's what the technology should be about. Yeah, there's so many other things, and there's so many questions because I wrote so many other questions that we didn't cover. Because one thing, I just need to ask it because I think we didn't even. I don't think we asked, because you said you came to New York, or to Boston actually when you were 11, and I don't remember.
No, I came to Seoul when I was 11. Came to Boston when I was 18.
When you were 18, sorry, when you were 18, yeah, 11, 8, and when you were 18, and I can't remember asking why.
Yeah,
didn't ask you why did you, when you were 18, why did you go?
Because I was afraid of failure. So in Korea, the academic achievements are determined by each grade you go.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was following that step by step. I'm going to, if I do this, I'm going to get to this one. And in my sophomore year or my junior year, I have determined that I'm not going to get into one of the top schools. And I couldn't accept it, that I'm going to not be the one of the success. So I already determined that I'm a failure. And instead of just leaving the failure, I said, why don't I just divert? I'm going to go to another land where I'm going to be able to start new again. And I was able to manipulate my parents to believe that I'm not actually running away. I'm paving a new way.
Is this an example of Nunchi?
Yes. Understanding what they're looking for, tell the story that they want to hear. And that's how I came to the States. And so I say I escaped from a country because of my fear of failure. Now that's why I'm comfortable to say that I am very dumb, because I didn't know how to succeed in the system that was given to me. So the only way I knew was to run away.
But the fact that you could see the system, say, this system isn't going to work for me, I need to find a new system. That's very smart.
Yes,
very smart.
I know.
All right, let's leave it at that. I'm very smart.
I'm very annoyed. I'm very annoyed with you. You're talking to two people who are very uncomfortable in systems as well. So
yeah.
So we're both. I think being sort of being sort of these people that don't fit in are the ones actually that can really move us forward, because we see sort of the things that other people are stuck in, and they don't know this because they take it for granted. And you can puncture that bubble, being with your Wearable Tracy, or with the way you talk about yourself and the way you present yourself and the things you do, the people you bring together. Also in your community designer kind of role. I mean, that's something. Those are the people we need. And those are the people that will come to the service at the moment, and nobody's teaching them, nobody's helping them. And so I think us and you specifically, the way you present yourself and show another way of doing things and another option is so liberating for many of us, for many people. Like, you give us an option that nobody ever thought about, and it's beautiful. And we're like, and it makes you jealous a little bit. Like, I wish I could be.
Wish I had that courage.
Yeah. Everything. But at the same time, it makes you ask questions about yourself as well. Go like, why don't I have that courage? Because I should have that courage. So it really, people like you help us to see an option and give us sort of that confidence, saying, hey, I can go a little bit that way. And that gives you more freedom and opportunities to meet other people and to make new connections. And I think that is and it has nothing to do with being dumb.
I think there's a fine line between being in a panic zone and being encouraged. Because I wouldn't have considered myself courageous at that time. Right? I consider myself, I'm panicking. I need to find a way, because this is not going to make me who I want to be. So I got to find another way. I wasn't being like, this is going to be like, I'm going to push forward and do this.
No, but that's not courageous. Courageous is doing things you're scared of. Courageous is doing things you're
I wasn't
courageous.
I would have been more courageous if I stayed, because I was scared of failure. So I jumped off. So it's almost like, you see the ship is burning, And
Yep.
I couldn't stay in that ship because I was going to burn. So although I didn't know how to swim, I said, I'm going to jump off and hope that there will be a floater or something to take me. And then I was able to.
That's how I ended up in the Netherlands. I could see, yes. I could see my life if I stayed. And so people always say, oh, you moved, you're so courageous. And I didn't feel courageous because I saw what would happen if I stayed. And I said, that cannot be it. And so I'll do anything else.
Yes.
But I mean, that means that you moved, you acted, you did something. You could have just, be hiding in your room or something,
True.
shut the world out and not wanting to interact with that. You chose actually to kind of leap forward, to kind of and create this amazing intervention for yourself. I mean, I think for a lot of people, that is courageous, but because it doesn't feel that way, that makes it courageous. I mean, if you go like, I'm going to be the hero here, that's not courage. That's dumb. Then you're just like, then you're just stupid, right? Like, okay, fine. That's not courage.
But I think definitely we, both Morgan and I, probably are more action driven. So we're not thinking too much about like, oh, if I stayed and I'm going to strategize, like, another year, I'm going to be better at this. And then I'm going to move on to the next one. And then maybe, hopefully, I will be able to find a good college to go in and find a good job, and all that. I was like, no, that's not going to work out. Let me do something else. So I think definitely, maybe I would consider myself very impatient in the system that we see. It's not going to give me. So in order for me to see change, maybe more optimistic as well, that I believe that the other side is brighter. So let me go to the other side and then see what light I can see there, because I definitely don't see light here.
Yeah. And I worked with a coach she was like a life coach, and she specializes in transitions. So how do you handle life transitions? What are your patterns?
Yeah.
And she found out that for me, I always need to get pushed into a corner. And that's when which is really, really uncomfortable, but that's when something really interesting and usually beautiful happens as well.
Yeah.
And so then it's also talking about the chaos or the crisis that we were talking about in the beginning as well, right? Like, okay, I planted these seeds, we didn't think it really took, but then when there was some external pressure, that's when things
definitely there's when moment of crisis happens in our lives, you could just to shut down and inhale the smoke that comes from the bottom, or you could jump off the window and hope that there is a firefighter down there with a little bit of cushion to save you, or a tree to break the fall. Definitely take the action of, don't wait for somebody else to save you, just save yourself.
To frame that in a slightly different way, objects that are in flux, they stay in flux, and objects that are not, they stay that way. So you need to create movement. You're not, if you wait for that movement to happen to you, it probably won't, because nobody's waiting for you. No one is, which is a sad truth, but it's so you need to start that movement yourself. Find a way to jump ship or whatever, or that burning building or whatever image you want to have in your head, but you created flux, you created movement, and that is the key, I think, to you understanding how to deal with the system, by jumping out, by going like, I'm going to jump out, because that's when you saw it, because that's when you learned, like, oh, this is where I'm from. And so your identity can grow because of that knowledge, and you can become you. And what we started with, who are you? Who am I? Who in this world, and because you kind of traveled and you went to into another place, and you could see where you were from a distance. And I think that is so also for you, Morgan, right? So it's the same, because you changed, because you moved. And
I think, of course, we're talking about burning buildings and jumping off of ships, but But it doesn't have to be so dramatic either. Just by you changing up your subway routine and wearing something on your head, that was already in a way just taking that step outside of the normal or the ordinary. And
exactly.
Yeah. And I think it would be so insightful for for all of us just to embrace that a little bit more.
Yeah. Create an intervention, however small.
Yeah.
Exactly. Go,
take a new way to work.
Yeah. Take a new way to work. Yeah. Try it out. And that's how it is. And
say yes.
Say yes.
That's a good one. That's a good one. To talk to a stranger, Arda.
Yes. Oh no. That's way no.
Too much.
Yeah, too much. Too soon. I actually am doing this more and more because so my wife actually does it all the time. I'm so jealous. And I have a friend, Peter. He's totally crazy, but I actually remember walking in New York with him on the street, and he would approach everyone. He would go up to anyone when he goes like, "Oh, that's a wonderful code. This is amazing. Where did you buy this one?" And like, I'm so jealous of that because
I love hanging out with those people.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had a little bit of that. So okay, let's find that courage, everyone. And thank you so much.
It was fun. Thank you so much for inviting and making me to reflect on who am I.
Thank you.
Same
for sharing. It's also it's like also making me reflect.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and we'll see you back with your new experience. And that would be awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.